I still remember the first time life threw me off course, long before Melissa and I reached our 10th anniversary. I was in my early 20s, juggling a full-time job with night classes, clinging to the dream of becoming an architect. Money was always tight, and most of my free time went into sketching blueprints for broke friends who paid me in coffee. I thought the grind was shaping me into someone ready for anything. I was wrong. The first real blow came when my younger brother was diagnosed with a rare blood disorder. Our family scrambled, bake sales, grant applications, endless fights with insurance reps just to get him treatment. I spent nights at his bedside, watching his small frame connected to IVs, vowing I'd never take time for granted again. That was when Melissa entered my life. She came off as sharp, magnetic, and hard to ignore. We bonded over books and late-night diner talks that stretched until dawn. On our first date, we debated happiness and whether it could exist in a chaotic world. By the third, I was sure she was the one. We married young, despite warnings from everyone around us. Wait until you're stable, they said. But I believed we'd build that stability together. We moved into a small apartment and scraped by, pinching pennies and dreaming big. The arrival of our first child was both exhilarating and terrifying. We were unprepared, but we leaned on hand-me-downs and pure grit. A couple of years later, our second son came along, and life became a fast-forward blur of diapers, midnight bottles, and exhausted joy. Somewhere in that whirlwind, Melissa began to drift. While I immersed myself in work and side gigs, trying to give us a better life, she grew restless. The routine of motherhood wore her down. I tried everything: planned surprise dates, thoughtful gifts, little gestures to reconnect, but nothing seemed to reach her. Still, I clung to the belief that love, like architecture, needed maintenance. I didn't realize the foundation had already started to crack. At first, it was just little things: missed dinners, vague late nights. I brushed it off as stress. But looking back, those moments stand out like warning signs I chose to ignore. Years later, the day we moved our youngest son into his college dorm, Melissa stood beside me, blinking back tears. Laura, our neighbor and the mother of his roommate, stood beside her, sniffling into a tissue. "It feels like they were just little kids," Laura whispered. Melissa nodded, taking a tissue. "It's surreal," she said. "They're about to start making decisions without us hovering." While they talked, I drifted into my own thoughts, weighed down by something I've been struggling to face for years. Doubt swelled as we approached the parking lot. Was I really ready to confront it? Or had the moment already passed me by? Melissa reached for my hand. I ignored it, pretending to fumble for my keys even though we weren't near the car yet. Laura gave me a curious look, but Melissa spoke softly before she could. "It's okay, David. I know what you're feeling." But she didn't. Not really. My thoughts jumped back to where it all started unraveling, right after our 10th anniversary, which happened to fall during an election year. The political climate was a circus, with both sides slinging accusations like it was a sport. I remember thinking these crooks shouldn't be buried in coffins. They should be screwed into the ground like the tools they were. That afternoon, after lunch, I grabbed the mail and noticed a padded envelope among the usual pile. I'd been expecting SD cards from eBay, so I opened it with mild excitement. Inside was a smaller manila envelope and a letter. My stomach dropped as I unfolded it. "Dear Melissa, I hope this finds you well. I've recently confronted my alcohol addiction and I'm now in recovery, 90 days sober. As part of the 12-step process, I'm reaching out to those I've hurt. I regret what happened between us. I don't want to disrupt your life, but I'm asking for forgiveness. Enclosed is something I've held on to for too long. I can't destroy it, but I don't want to keep it either. Do with it what you will. Warm regards. Trevor." Trevor? I stared at the name. The only Trevor I could think of was a washed-up guy we used to know. Lived in his parents' basement until they kicked him out for not paying property taxes. He was about a decade older than us, and we jokingly called him Slinky, because no matter how hard he fell, he always bounced back in the most awkward, pathetic way. Dread settled in as I opened the manila envelope. A stack of glossy 8x10s slid out. The first few were of Melissa, much younger, dressed provocatively in a tight blouse and shorts I instantly recognized. I turned to a family photo on my desk to check the date. 9 years ago. As I flipped through the photos, the outfit shrank until there weren't any left. Melissa was completely nude in the final ones, entwined with Trevor in graphic, unmistakable poses. I collapsed into my chair, the room spinning. My breath caught in my chest. Reality hit me like a freight train. This wasn't some old, harmless fling. It was betrayal captured in high definition. How long had it been going on? The photos made one thing crystal clear. Melissa hadn't just slipped. She had crossed a line, fully and deliberately. My eyes flicked to the framed pictures on my desk, snapshots from birthdays, vacations, and school plays. I scanned each one, half expecting to see Trevor lurking somewhere in the background, some smug shadow I'd missed. And then, the thought hit me like a punch to the gut. What if the boys weren't mine? I grabbed a recent family photo and stared at it, harder than I ever had before. Both boys resembled Melissa, same eyes, same nose. But they had my jawline, my shoulders. That had to mean something, right? Still, the seed of doubt had been planted, and it was already growing. I tore open a desk drawer, searching for answers. Somewhere among old receipts and expired coupons, I found what I needed. The baseball registration forms we'd filled out for the kids last season. Back when I was their age, all you needed to sign up was a name and maybe your mom's phone number. Now it was 6 pages of bureaucracy, insurance info, allergy disclosures, waivers, consent forms. You'd think they were joining a government agency instead of a local sports team. But I wasn't looking for any of that. I flipped through the paperwork until I found the section with blood types, recorded during their last physical. I pulled my Red Cross donor card from my wallet. Blood type O, Melissa's was the same. We used to joke we were a perfect match, even medically. I looked at our older son's form. Blood type O. Relief flooded my chest like air returning after being underwater too long. Then I checked the form for our younger son. A positive. My hands froze. My eyes locked onto those 2 bold letters. I stared at them, willing them to change, to correct themselves somehow. But they didn't. They couldn't. Even someone with the most basic understanding of biology knows that 2 parents with O-type blood can't produce a child with type A. It's impossible. Which meant I wasn't his father. My stomach turned. My head started spinning. I sat there, paralyzed, trying to make sense of something that refused to make sense. 1,000 thoughts flooded my mind. Should I confront Melissa? Should I leave? Should I take the boys and walk out without saying a word? Would they even want to come with me? They were still just kids, 9 and 11. Would I lose them too? For over an hour, I sat there, running through every possible outcome. None of them ended well. None brought peace. By the time I finally crawled into bed, I wasn't any closer to a decision. Just drained, mentally and emotionally emptied. The next morning, I sat silently at the kitchen table, watching Melissa rinse dishes like it was just another normal day. But everything had changed. The house looked the same, smelled the same, even sounded the same, but I felt like a stranger in my own home. It was like a magician had revealed the trick behind a performance I believed in for years. Nothing felt real anymore. Melissa, standing in her usual spot, looked like someone I no longer knew. Melissa, I said quietly. She didn't turn. Yeah. Do you remember Trevor? I saw her shoulders stiffen. Just for a second. But I noticed. Trevor, she repeated casually. Our old neighbor? Wow. Haven't thought about him in forever. Yeah, Trevor, I said slowly, watching her carefully. The guy who was always running around with his camera, snapping pictures of everyone's kids. Kinda creepy when you think about it. Melissa let out a short laugh. Too light, too quick. Believe me, David, Trevor wasn't into kids. That answer landed awkwardly. I leaned in. How do you know that? She turned her back to me, dried her hands with a towel, and without missing a beat, called the boys for breakfast. Then, as casually as if she were reading the weather, she added, I used to see him some mornings. Hungover, sneaking women out of his basement before his parents woke up. My voice sharpened. You seem to know a hell of a lot about Trevor. She finally turned, eyes narrowed. Don't be ridiculous. Do you miss him or something? She asked, as if the question could be flipped on me. No, I said flatly. But it sounds like you might. Melissa sighed and rolled her eyes, shifting into that familiar tone she used when she wanted to end a conversation. Look, when Laura moved in, everything got easier. Her kids and ours were close in age. They practically grew up together. When Trevor lost the house, Laura bought it with her late husband's life insurance. You remember him, right? The cop who died on duty. She said it all like she was reading off a grocery list. Laura leaned on us a lot, being a single mom. And I leaned on you to help her, she added. You were always fixing things at her place. It worked. You didn't mind, did you? I didn't answer. She stepped closer and playfully tapped my shoulder. David, are you seriously jealous of Trevor? After all these years? I leaned back in my chair. Is there a reason I should be? Melissa paused, just for a moment, then turned her attention to her coffee, stirring it without looking at me. "Of course not," she said finally. "Trevor was just a sad drunk with a camera. Could have been good if he hadn't been wasted all the time." The words didn't land the way she thought they would. "Melissa," I said carefully, "you're being oddly defensive. Is there something you want to admit?" Her eyes flashed as she slammed her coffee cup down, louder than necessary. Before she could speak, the boys came barreling into the kitchen, their energy cutting through the tension like a blade. She turned to them with a forced smile, already switching gears like nothing had happened. I stood and left the table. As I climbed the stairs, a realization hit me harder than anything else so far. No matter what Melissa said or didn't say, something between us had broken beyond repair. The trust one once had was gone, and it wasn't coming back. The following day, I packed everything, Trevor's letter, the photos, the medical forms, and drove them straight to my brother Ryan. Ryan was technically my half-brother, though anyone who saw us together growing up wouldn't have known the difference. His parents had escaped Eastern Europe during the Cold War, only to die in a tragic accident when we were just kids. A social worker asked my parents to take him in, just for a little while, but somehow that temporary stay turned into forever. Now, all these years later, Ryan sat across from me, sifting through the letter, the photos, the blood-type forms, everything. After a long silence, he looked up. "David, are you absolutely sure you want to go through with this?" I paused, but nodded. Thinking back, I realized what a burden it must have been for my family to take in another kid when we were barely getting by ourselves. Years later, I asked my mom how she managed. She just shrugged and said, "Cut the bread thinner. Add more water to the soup." That was my mother. Quiet strength. And my father? He was deeply religious, but not in a preachy, performative way. He believed in doing right by people, no matter what. He always ended our dinner prayers with, "Next time, may there be more at the table, not fewer. And Lord, save us from your followers." Ryan was treated no differently than the rest of us. That was both a blessing and a curse, depending on Dad's mood. Just before he died, I asked him why he agreed to take in another kid when we were already drowning. His answer? "Because that's what a man does." Ryan and I looked nothing alike. His pale, almost translucent skin reflected his Eastern European roots, while I carried our Southern Italian coloring. People were often confused when we introduced ourselves as brothers. I remember one Father's Sunday when someone leaned over and said my mom must have been very fair-skinned. My dad didn't miss a beat. Oh yeah, practically see-through. Ryan was always sharp, top of his law school class, recruited by a major firm before graduation. Within a few years, he made partner. He drove a sleek German car, had a glass-walled apartment overlooking the city, and a stunning fiancée from old money who hung off his arm at every fundraiser and gala. Then, it all crashed. He walked into his mentor's office one afternoon, riding high after landing a massive client, only to find his fiancée and said mentor in a compromising position, one that couldn't be explained away. Ryan didn't blow up. He waited, stayed with the firm for another year, collected his bonuses, played it cool. Then, with surgical precision, he left, taking a few top attorneys and key clients with him. The firm limped along for a while, but within a few years, it folded. Ryan started his own boutique practice, focusing on everyday legal work, contracts, wills, small business filings. But behind the scenes, he served as legal muscle on high-stakes cases. A kind of hired gun with a license to sue. Now he was married, had 2 kids, and lived a quieter life. But we'd always stayed close. That day, he looked through the pile of evidence on the table between us. His eyes scanned each page with the focus of someone used to seeing the worst in people. "You're still in shock," he said. "Give yourself some time before doing anything permanent." "Oh, like you did." I snapped. "You're still my hero for the way you handled your firm." Ryan smirked. "Not everyone gets to be the hero, David. Somebody's got to sit by the roadside and clap while the rest of us pass by." Then his tone shifted, more serious. "Look, Melissa's human. And humans? We're selfish. Most people only think about how they're being treated, not how their actions ripple outward." I rolled my eyes. "Great. Now you're Yoda." "I'm not here for a morality lesson, Ryan. I want out. And I want that cheating witch to walk away with nothing. People are going to know exactly what she did. No hiding behind hormones or midlife excuses." Ryan leaned forward, folding his hands. "Revenge feels good for about 5 minutes. But it's just another way of giving someone power over you. If she knows you're broken over this, she wins. Trust me, the most painful thing for people like Melissa? Being ignored. Moving on without her, that's the real win." He turned to his computer and tapped a few keys. I don't do family law, but I know someone who does. Guy's a shark. No mercy. If you're ready, I'll set up the call. A week later, Ryan and I sat in a posh downtown office, the kind with frosted glass and leather chairs that silently scream billable hour. Across from us sat a bulky man in a tailored suit, flipping through the massive file I brought. Tax returns, mortgage statements, pay stubs, paternity results, wills. It looked like I was preparing for a federal trial. He adjusted his glasses, finished skimming, and leaned back. Walk away, he said, flatly. I blinked. Excuse me. You heard me, he said. Walk away. That's it. I asked, stunned. Pretend none of this ever happened? Smile and carry on while knowing I've been lied to and humiliated. The lawyer rocked back in his chair. Unless you've got video footage of Melissa doing something insane, like feeding your kids Red Bull and making them wrestle for prize money, then yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. He leaned forward, jabbing a finger at me. You've got a decent setup. A house. 2 kids. A job. If you push this too far, you could lose it all. You'll be stuck in a shoebox apartment, broke, while Melissa skips around town with her new boyfriends on your dime. My voice rose. You're saying I'd have to pay child support for a kid that isn't even mine? Melissa has a job, for God's sake. He gave me a look that said rookie. Her part-time salon gig doesn't come close to your income. So yes, alimony is almost guaranteed. As for child support, there are only 6 states in the entire country where you could avoid paying for a child who's not biologically yours but was born during your marriage. He spread his hands. This is the system, David. You want to change it, run for office. But if you want to survive it, think carefully before lighting the match. We don't live in one of those states, the lawyer said flatly, flipping the folder closed. I leaned forward, my voice tight. But what if I can prove Melissa always knew the child wasn't mine? Isn't that fraud? He clasped his hands, elbows resting on the desk. Let me tell you a dirty little secret about the legal system, David. Even if you could prove, beyond all doubt, that she knew and deliberately deceived you, it wouldn't change a thing. No jail time. No fines. No repayments. Nothing. I stared at him, dumbfounded. Seriously? I asked. She could flat out admit she's been lying for years, and there's no consequence? She could take out a full-page ad in the New York Times confessing the whole thing, and the courts wouldn't make her give back a cent of what you've paid over the years. I slumped in my chair as the weight of it all hit me again. Don't believe me? He added. There's a guy in Florida who paid child support for years to a woman he was never married to. DNA test later proved the kid wasn't his. You know what the court said? Too bad. Pay anyway. In the best interest of the child, they said. He's still paying, and the kid'll be 18 before the appeals even wrap up. I rubbed my temples. What about the boyfriend? Can I go after him? Make him pay. The lawyer's expression darkened. In most states, only the mother can legally pursue the biological father for support. A few states allow a civil suit, but even then, you'd have to prove both Melissa and the other guy deliberately conspired to deceive you, and that it caused significant, measurable harm to the family. He leaned back, gave me a flat look. Our state doesn't let you do that. Sorry. I sank deeper into the leather chair, overwhelmed. Every road seemed blocked. Here's the real question, David, he said, spreading his arms. What's more important, your pride or your sanity? Is it worth burning your finances to the ground just to make a point? I didn't answer. If your goal is to punish her, it won't fix what's broken inside you. Believe me, I've seen it. You'll feel justified for a while, but in the end, you'll still be angry and broke. Better to cut ties clean, rebuild, and find someone who actually values you. Ryan, who had been silent most of the time, finally spoke. What about counseling? Maybe it's not too far gone. The lawyer let out a bitter laugh. Therapy? At best, it works for maybe 10% of couples. Most of the time, it just gives people space to organize their escape plans. He locked eyes with me. 2/3 of women who enter marriage counseling end up filing for divorce. And more than half of women who cheat eventually leave the marriage for good. I swallowed hard. You're 35, right? He asked. I nodded. Yeah. Why? Well, statistically, women are most likely to cheat in their mid-40s. If she's already stepped out now, chances are she'll do it again down the line. People romanticize their mistakes. They forget the damage and just remember the thrill. That thrill becomes addictive. And they go chasing it again. Ryan gave a slow nod. Once a cheater, always a cheater, he muttered. The lawyer shrugged. Nothing's guaranteed, of course. But infidelity is the second leading cause of divorce, right after financial issues. I clenched my fists on my lap. I swear this won't happen to me again. The lawyer gave a faint, knowing smile. Swearing's just the middle ground between running and fighting. It sounds strong, but it changes nothing. I exhaled hard. This is garbage. The system's garbage. He nodded. You've got kids, David. Divorce changes everything for them. Statistically, children of divorce are more likely to struggle with drugs, with relationships, with depression. They act out more. They hurt more. And they don't always understand why. He paused. Nobody really wins in a divorce. But the ones who lose the most? Always the kids. Suddenly, a memory surfaced, crystal clear. The day I told my father I was going to be a dad. His words had stuck with me ever since. David, a lot of men become fathers, but few fathers truly become men. To be both, your priority must be your children. If there's only enough food for one, they eat. You go hungry. If there's no roof, they sleep. You face the cold. If there's no money, you go without. Strength doesn't mean standing tall in front of a mirror. It means staying upright when everything in your life is trying to pull you down. Real strength, he'd said, isn't the chest-thumping kind. It's the kind that admits when help is needed. You'll be tested. You'll fail. And you'll keep going. Because you're not doing it for applause. You do it because it's right. You do it for your family. Those words rang in my head like church bells as I stood abruptly, pushing back the chair. I extended my hand to the lawyer. Thanks for your time. I've learned more than I expected, but I don't think I'll be needing your services. He stood and shook my hand firmly. No charge. This was just a conversation between old colleagues. He glanced over at Ryan. Besides, I owe your brother. He got me out of a tight spot years ago. My door's always open, David. Anytime. Later, as Ryan and I sat in traffic on the drive home, I turned toward him. Ryan, after you caught your fiancé and your mentor, why didn't you leave the firm immediately? Why stay almost a full year? His jaw tightened before answering. Believe me, David. My first thought was to quit on the spot. Then he smirked. Actually, my first thought was to headbutt that smug bastard. And I did. I raised an eyebrow. He fiddled with the radio, skipping past static. Left him on the office carpet, curled up and moaning. And then, I asked. I stormed into my office and typed up my resignation. I was done. But you didn't hand it in. He sighed. I was furious. Then I was embarrassed. Then I started feeling sorry for myself. But I could practically hear Dad's voice. Self-pity is useless. Don't hand your enemies your dignity wrapped in a bow. The next morning, the senior partner came in, all smiles, trying to smooth things over. Pretended it was just a misunderstanding. Truth is, he didn't want to lose me or my clients. He offered me the moon to stay. I made sure he signed it. Ryan chuckled, shaking his head. From that moment on, I knew no one controlled my happiness but me. I kept the fiancée around just long enough to show her she wasn't the center of my world. When I met someone better, she was gone. Same with the firm. Once my contract was up, I walked. His words hit hard and stuck. Right then and there, I decided I would stop letting Melissa's betrayal define me. I would start living for what mattered. My kids. My values. My future. I couldn't change the past. But I could decide who I was going to be from this moment forward. Melissa faded into the background of my life, a presence more than a partner. Everything shifted about a week after that final meeting with the lawyer. One night over dinner, she looked up from her plate, smiling like she'd won a prize. David, I've got great news. The salon's making me full-time manager. I'll have to work evenings and weekends, but I'm sure you and the boys can handle dinner and laundry without me. Perfect. By the time she woke up, I was already gone for work. When I got home, she was at the salon. And by the time she returned, I was already asleep. On her days off, I told her I'd joined a darts league. The truth? I started seeing a psychoanalyst. Through those sessions, I realized something important. I wasn't broken. I wasn't less than. I had the right to be happy, just like anyone else. Melissa's choices, past or present, weren't something I could control. Life throws temptations at everyone. Giving in is about weakness, not circumstance. And once I stopped trusting her, my feelings dulled. The fire went out. The anger eventually faded, but the distance never closed. From then on, I did everything for my kids. Period. Melissa became like a distant roommate with benefits, someone I shared a house with, but nothing else. She was so wrapped up in her job and her self-image, I doubt she even noticed. Meanwhile, the boys and I thrived. I took out a home equity loan and started transforming the house. I built a deck, added a pool, turned the basement into a fully loaded man cave. Traded my dull sedan for a massive SUV with third-row seating. Plenty of room for weekend runs to ball games, pizza joints, and the occasional ice cream stop. Laura's kids often came along too. Her place was always open, and her kids blended in seamlessly. Strangers would see us and assume we were one big blended family. I'd half joke, wouldn't mind that, and Laura would give me a look, half amused, half puzzled. Melissa, meanwhile, was rarely around. There was always an excuse: overtime, exhaustion, needing to recharge. Eventually, even the boys stopped inviting her to anything. Years passed. My oldest and Laura's eldest both got into the same college. My son landed a partial scholarship, but I quietly covered the rest of his tuition along with hers. Laura never knew. 3 years later, our younger kids followed the same path. I didn't hesitate. Which brings us to now. The boys were gone, off at college, starting their own lives. I just returned from vacuuming out the SUV, empty snack wrappers and soda bottles still scattered from our last road trip. Melissa was on the back deck, lounging in a chair, nursing a glass of wine and soaking in the final warmth of summer. She didn't hear me sit across from her. Her eyes were closed, head tilted toward the setting sun. Then, without looking at me, she sighed. "David," she said, swirling her wine. "Now that the boys are gone, the house feels empty. I think I'm ready for a change." I'd already made my decision. I just hadn't told her yet. "Oh, Melissa," I thought, "you'll get the change you're ready for." Without a word, I reached into my folder and dropped a stack of papers onto the glass table between us. Melissa blinked, caught off guard. "What's this?" "I think it's time we ended this," I said. "I want a divorce." Her eyes snapped open. She snatched the papers and flipped through them. "What the hell is this?" she hissed. "A copy of the divorce petition," I said evenly. "Once you have a lawyer, mine will send over the final documents. You'll see I've been fair." She stood, her wine sloshing. "Fair," she snapped. "Are you insane? After 20 years, this is how you do it? After everything we've been through?" She thumbed through the pages, eyes narrowing. "No alimony? No share of the savings? What about the debt? What's your game here?" I stayed calm. "We earn roughly the same now. Our retirement accounts are close in value." That was mostly true. I'd kept my salary modest on paper and used the bulk of my 401k to pay for our son's education and Laura's daughter, for that matter. Melissa's face darkened. "We only make the same because I work twice the hours you do. And I'm not giving up this house. I've put too much into it." I stared at her. "Melissa, the house is underwater. And where do you think the money came from for the deck, the kitchen remodel, the backyard? Who paid for that?" She slammed the stack onto the table, her face flushed red. "We're not getting divorced," she snapped. "This conversation is over." Then something changed in her eyes. Cold calculation. Suspicion. "You fool," she spat. "You've met someone else, haven't you? Some little tart who thinks your dad bod is sexy? Is that what this is about?" I didn't answer. "I gave you the best years of my life," she seethed. "And now you're leaving me for some 20-something bimbo? How long has this been going on, David? How long have you been cheating on me?" I sighed, exhausted. "Melissa, this isn't about that. We're in a no-fault state. The court divides everything 50-50. It doesn't matter who did what." Her voice rose. "The hell it doesn't. I deserve to know the truth. Who is she?" I shook my head. Mistakes were made on both sides. But right now, we don't need to drag that up. We just need to move forward. That's when the wine hit me in the face. She hurled the glass and all, shattering it on the deck behind me as I stood and walked inside. She stormed after me, shouting, "You piece of garbage," she screamed. "You think you can toss me aside like some used napkin so you can go play fantasy life with some younger woman? No wonder the bed's been dead, too busy sneaking around while I was loyal." I turned slowly, wiped my face, and calmly set a folder down on the kitchen table. Inside was a stack of glossy photographs. Melissa's own past, laid out in full color. Her mouth opened to argue again, but her eyes fell to the images. Her face drained. She didn't speak. And for the first time in years, neither did I. Melissa froze mid-rant the moment her eyes landed on the photographs, each one more damning than the last. Her mouth hung open as the color drained from her face. "Looks like you had your own loyalty issues," I said, sitting down at the kitchen table. She stumbled over to the sink and splashed cold water on her face, trying to compose herself. When she returned, she gingerly reached for the photos, as if they might burn her fingers. She pushed them away with one trembling hand. "David, please get rid of them. she whispered. I slid the pictures back into the envelope and tucked it into the drawer beside me. It doesn't matter anymore, I said. I honestly don't care. Melissa reached out and clutched my hand, her voice cracking. It was just one time. I swear. Please, believe me. I pulled my hand back slowly. Melissa. I don't. Tears welled in her eyes, and her shoulders sagged as she kept talking. It was so long ago. I didn't know how hard it would be being a mother. I was exhausted, overwhelmed. You were always working or in school. I didn't feel like a person anymore. I felt like a function, just someone's wife or someone's mom. I leaned back, arms crossed, unmoved. Melissa, I was busting my ass with 2 jobs in college so we could have a life. I don't need to hear how hard it was for you. She ignored me and kept going. Trevor was just easy. He was fun. His mom helped with the baby sometimes, and when she was around, I could actually breathe for a bit. Trevor always had a drink in hand, and eventually, I started joining him. One night, he pulled out his camera, told me I looked amazing, said I should model. At first, it was a joke. I'd lift my blouse a little, pull it off one shoulder. It didn't seem like a big deal. You see more on the beach. Her voice trailed off, barely audible now, but I'd heard more than enough. Still, she continued, voice thick with guilt. One day, I mentioned I wanted a nice photo of you for Christmas. Trevor offered to take it for free. We did the shoot, and it went great. The picture turned out beautiful. Our son fell asleep on the couch in Trevor's. His parents' basement, Melissa, I interrupted, my tone sharp. She flinched, wiping away a tear. Yes, his basement. Our son was asleep. I didn't want to wake him, so Trevor and I had a drink to unwind. One turned into a whole bottle. And, well, with your crazy schedule, we hadn't been intimate in a long time. I was feeling excited, wanted. When Trevor picked up the camera again and started taking more photos. I let it happen. I let everything happen. He made me feel hot, desired, like I mattered. The air left my lungs. I thought the photos had been the worst part. I was wrong. Her confession knocked the wind out of me. You're telling me, I stammered, that you slept with that drunk loser while our son was asleep just a few feet away? Melissa's face collapsed into her hands as she sobbed uncontrollably. Oh God, David. I'm so ashamed. I don't know what came over me. Enough. I cut her off, my voice cold but steady. We can't rewrite the past, but we can own it. Sign the papers. We'll tell everyone it was mutual, that we grew apart. No one needs to know the real reason, not unless you force me to tell them. She lifted her tear-streaked face, eyes wide and desperate. It doesn't have to be this way, David. It was just a moment, a lapse in judgment. It didn't mean anything. I reached into my folder again and pulled out another set of papers, sliding them across the table. Every action has consequences, I said quietly. Some take years to catch up, but they always do. Her hand shook as she flipped through the pages. Charts, figures, reports. Her brow furrowed. What is this? The results from the DNA tests, I said, keeping my tone even. Something doesn't add up. You already know what it is. Melissa clutched her chest, her breath caught in her throat. She began to choke, gasping for air. I quickly grabbed a paper bag from under the sink and handed it to her. Breathe. Slow, through your nose. You're okay. After a few tense moments, her breathing evened out. She set the bag down on the table, pale and quiet. You knew, I said, calmly but with steel in my voice. You knew he wasn't mine. She shook her head rapidly, twisting the bag in her hands. I didn't know. I suspected. I hoped. I prayed. I narrowed my eyes. Come on, Melissa. You graduated with honors in biology. You seriously expected me to believe that premature birth story? That his blood type didn't raise red flags for you? She looked away, her silence louder than any confession. I kept going. You cheated, Melissa. And then you made me raise a child that wasn't mine. And every day since then, you looked me in the eye and lied to me. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered. It wasn't like that, David. After what happened with Trevor, I felt so guilty. I couldn't bear to be touched. Not even by you. I threw myself into being the best wife, the best mother. I thought maybe if I just tried hard enough, I could erase it. And when you found out you were pregnant? I asked. I panicked, she admitted. I had nightmares about you leaving me. About you taking our son. Or forcing me to terminate. Melissa, I said sharply. Have I ever threatened you? Have I ever forced you to do anything? You know how much I value family. If you told me the truth, we could have figured it out. Together. I couldn't, she whispered. It was just one lie. No, I said firmly. It was one lie, every single day for years. That's not a mistake. That's a life lived in deceit. I didn't have a choice, she murmured. You always had a choice, I said, standing. You just didn't trust me to make the right one. She broke again, sobbing into her arms. Please, David, she begged through the tears. I shook my head. The lies end here. The boys deserve the truth. Secrets like this, they rot a family from the inside out. She looked up, horrified. You wouldn't tell them. You can't. If you don't, I said calmly, I will. Her voice cracked, weak and defensive. What do you expect me to say? Hey boys, your mom's a lying, unfaithful mess who betrayed your father? I managed a tired smile. You can leave out the colorful adjectives. Just tell them the truth. Say you made a mistake. Say we both love them. That's the part that matters. When the time finally came, the boys handled it far better than I'd braced for. In today's world, where step-parents, blended families, and messy histories are more common than not, the situation didn't hit them as hard as it hit us. Kids are resilient. Honest, too. Brutally so. But Melissa? She took it hard. Not in a remorseful and healing kind of way. More like bitter, accusatory, angry at the world. She kept insisting we could fix things, mourning the house as if it were a living symbol of our effort. I'd already checked out. I wasn't rebuilding anything with her. I just wanted out. Ironically, the house itself became more of a nightmare than the divorce. Our massive corporate lender, mega bank, as Ryan liked to call them, ran us in circles. Every attempt to short sell was mysteriously blocked. Every call landed us with a new representative who contradicted the last. Their paperwork demands were absurd. I'm pretty sure we killed half a forest just fulfilling their arbitrary requirements. At one point, I joked that I knew more about their fax preferences than my own kids' school schedules. Thankfully, Ryan called in a favor. One of his contacts, a real estate attorney known for hammering big banks into submission, took on our case. Over the next several months, he unearthed a slew of violations. Megabank had failed to follow both internal policy and state and federal homeowner protection laws. It was a mess of their own making. The turning point came when Megabank didn't bother showing up to court. Despite being served, for separate times, they simply ignored the hearing. We were awarded a default judgment. Just like that, we owned the house free and clear. On top of that, they were ordered to reimburse us for court and attorney fees. Then the fun began. Our lawyer showed up at the local branch with 2 armed sheriffs, a court order, and a moving truck. They were there to seize assets, furniture, computers, office equipment. The works. The manager scrambled, trying to call headquarters, only to realize his office phone had already been unplugged and packed. News of the chaos spread fast. Local media showed up. So did a small crowd. People took selfies in front of the bank as signs and lights were dismantled. It felt like David had finally punched Goliath in the mouth, and people were loving it. For a brief, strange moment, our lawyer became a local legend. Even I got my 15 minutes of fame. But the win came with responsibility. The house became a key part of the divorce settlement. Melissa refused to sell it right away. She said it was her sanctuary. I think she just didn't want to admit I could walk away and still win. So we compromised. She'd pay me half the rental value each month and cover all utilities, gas, water, electric. We split insurance and property taxes down the middle and agreed that when the house eventually sold, the profits would be divided evenly. After the divorce, I did the typical middle-aged, newly single guy thing, moved into a bland apartment with off-white walls and terrible parking. I joined a gym. Not because I liked exercise, but because it felt like the expected next step. A man trying to rebuild his life has to look the part, right? One evening, while waiting for my free personal training consult, I heard a familiar voice. David. Oh my God, it's been ages. I turned and saw Laura, our old neighbor. She looked incredible, glowing in a snug gym leotard with the company logo stitched across the front. She hugged me, and I couldn't help but notice she'd clearly been working out longer than I had. Laura, wow, I said, stepping back. You look amazing. She laughed. I work here part-time. And lucky you, I'm your trainer for tonight. I groaned. Is bribery an option? Chocolate bar of your choice. Nice try, she said, tugging me toward a row of machines that looked like they were designed by medieval torturers. None of it resembled the equipment I remembered from high school gym class. Trying not to look completely weak, I pushed through the 90-minute session. I threw up twice, blamed it on too much office coffee. Laura was kind enough not to call me out. Instead, she offered to meet for coffee afterward. She looked fresh and radiant. I looked like a man who just crawled out of a steam room wearing shame. "Laura," I muttered as we approached the counter. "When did ordering coffee turn into a chemistry experiment?" She laughed as she rattled off something with almond milk, caramel drizzle, 2 pumps of this, and a shot of that. "Aren't there just 3 sizes?" I asked. "Small, medium, large?" She grinned. "David, just tell them what you like. They'll make it." "Okay then," I said, rubbing my eyes. "Give me something I could drink at a football game without getting mocked." She chuckled and led us to a table. Her hand rested lightly on my arm. "David, I've missed you." I smiled. "Nah, you just miss having someone around to fix your broken porch light for free." She smirked. "Maybe a little. But seriously, I'm sorry about you and Melissa." I nearly choked on my drink. Who told you that?" Laura studied me for a moment. "No one. I've just known you both for a long time." I couldn't prove anything, but Melissa always had this look. Like she was holding her breath. Like she was hoping not to get caught. I nodded slowly. "So, Melissa never said anything to you directly?" Laura shook her head. "No. But let me ask you something. If she had come clean, if she had told you everything herself, would it have changed anything? Would you have taken her back?" I didn't hesitate. "No. It's not just the cheating. It's the betrayal. The lies. The rewriting of truth day after day. Once trust is gone, what's left?" I stared into my coffee cup, swirling the liquid like it held answers. Trying to rebuild something with Melissa would feel like a blind man trying to use a microscope. Without trust, there's no point. The marriage was over. Laura nodded. I soughed with understanding. "Well," she said, raising her cup slightly, "here's to moving forward." I raised mine in return, trying to cut the heaviness with a few jokes about Melissa, the absurdity of our divorce agreement, and how somehow I ended up stuck with a house I didn't even want. Laura laughed, and for the first time in what felt like years, I felt truly relaxed. Not guarded. Not pretending. Just me. We talked for hours, conversation flowing like it used to back in the old neighborhood, easy, real, comfortable. Then Laura glanced at her watch and gasped. "Oh no, David, I've got to go. The last bus is about to leave." I waved her off. "Forget the bus. I'll drive you home." Her relief was obvious, but she hesitated. "Thanks. My car's been out of commission. Starter issues. I think it finally gave up the ghost." "What?" I frowned. "Laura, why didn't you say something sooner?" She shifted in her seat. "Money's been tight. Work cut my hours again. I was going to save enough from my next paycheck to get it fixed." "Let's just go to the auto parts store now," I said, already standing. "I'll take care of it tonight." Her cheeks flushed. "That's really generous, but I can't let you." "You didn't ask," I cut in, grinning. "Call it a loan. Pay me back whenever. Besides, all my tools are still in Melissa's garage. Too lazy to move them. Might as well put them to good use." I offered her my hand. "Come on. Your chariot awaits." She raised a skeptical brow. "Chariot? Please tell me it's not that oversized gas guzzler you used to drive." I laughed. "Nope. Traded it in for a Prius. Saving the world 1 gallon at a time." She gave me an exaggerated look. "You? Driving a Prius? I can't even picture that." "Trust me, neither can I," I said. "Every time I get in, I feel like I'm surrendering a chunk of masculinity. But hey, size matters, right?" She burst into laughter as I led her out. We lucked out at the parts store. They had the exact starter she needed, and it was on sale. Melissa wasn't home, so I still had access to the garage. With the tools I'd stashed there, I got Laura's car running again in just over an hour. When the engine roared to life, Laura's eyes lit up like it was Christmas morning. Before I could even wipe my hands, she threw her arms around me and kissed me quick, but firm, right on the lips. I didn't react. Still holding a wrench, still wiping sweat off my brow. Just stunned. Later, while washing up in her kitchen, I noticed the faucet barely dribbled and the drain was backing up. "Why didn't you say anything about this earlier?" I asked. "I could have fixed it weeks ago." Her smile faltered. "You and Melissa had enough going on. I didn't want to bother you over something small." She paused, her voice dropping. "And I've been trying to manage things on my own. I don't want to feel like a charity case." I put a hand gently on her shoulder. "Laura, this isn't charity. This is what neighbors do. What friends do. Besides, I've got more free time than I know what to do with, and clearly, your house has enough problems to keep me busy. She gave a watery smile, brushing a tear from her cheek. Okay. But don't blame me if I take advantage of your kindness. Over the next 2 weeks, I spent most of my evenings at her place. Small repairs here and there, repainting trim, fixing door hinges, replacing outdated fixtures. Nothing major, but it gave me a sense of purpose. And being around Laura, it felt like breathing clean air after years in a smoke-filled room. One night, as we shared a bottle of wine, she finally opened up about her late husband. He was one of the good ones, she said quietly. Always helping people, even when it wasn't his job. She stared into her glass. He died doing that. Helping. He stopped to help a woman change her tire on the side of the road. A drunk driver clipped him without even slowing down. She swallowed hard. He hung on for 4 days in the hospital. His last words weren't about himself. He told me, take care of the boys. Take care of them, and yourself. Tears welled in her eyes and spilled down her cheeks. I walked over and wrapped her in a hug. She cried quietly against my shoulder, her voice muffled. When he died, everything changed. Because he wasn't technically on duty, we didn't qualify for survivor benefits. His life insurance helped me buy this house, but it wasn't enough. His squad was amazing. They stepped up in ways I'll never forget. But everywhere I turned, I saw him, heard his voice. I had to leave. I couldn't breathe around those memories. I held her, offering nothing but silence. Sometimes words aren't needed. The next morning, I was lying under her bathroom sink, wrestling with the drain, when I felt a nudge on my leg. David, Laura's voice called out. Where'd you go last night? Back to my depressing little apartment, I grunted, unscrewing the trap. You were wiped out. I put you to bed before heading out. I slid my arm out and held up the trap, clogged with enough hair to knit a sweater. Laura, seriously, do you bathe a raccoon in this sink? She laughed, then the front door slammed. Heavy footsteps. Fast. Then the voice I least wanted to hear. Where is he? What are you doing with my husband? I groaned, already banging my head on the pipe as I pulled myself out. Melissa. She stood in the doorway, face red, jaw clenched. Leave him alone, she shrieked, glaring daggers at Laura. Laura looked stunned, backing up as Melissa marched in, full of fury and self-righteousness. Melissa, I said, trying to keep my voice level. What are you doing here? She turned to me, eyes wild. Don't play dumb, David. I know what's going on. Melissa's voice was sharp, dripping with jealousy. Every night, you leave her house looking like you just plowed a field. I know exactly what's going on. She paused, taking a shaky breath like she was trying to collect herself. I get it. You're punishing me. Having your little rebound fling. But enough is enough. You've had your fun with her. It's time to come home. Where you belong. I blinked, stunned. Melissa, this isn't happening. We're not getting back together. That ship sailed a long time ago. And for the record, Laura and I. Before I could finish, Laura stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me, cutting me off with theatrical timing. That's right, Melissa. There's nothing between us. She paused, then smiled sweetly. But that's about to change. I think both Melissa and I stopped breathing at the same time. Laura turned, walked calmly to Melissa, and gently took her hand. Look, we've known each other for years. But next time, call before you show up. We'll be busy. Then she opened the door and guided Melissa out with unshakable poise. Click. Door closed. Silence. Laura came back and found me standing exactly where she'd left me, still halfway under the bathroom sink, mouth open like I'd swallowed a fly. Laura, I managed. Thanks for the support, but you didn't have to. Before I could finish, she tugged off her blouse. No bra. No hesitation. For a few seconds, I forgot how to speak. Or blink. Laura, I asked, finally forcing eye contact, are you sure about this? She stepped in close, wrapping her arms around my neck. David, I've known you longer than I knew my husband. I loved him, and I kept my promise to care for our boys. But now it's time to take care of me. Taking my hand, she led me upstairs. We were both nervous, awkward, unsure, but somehow it worked. Like riding a bike after years away, we found a rhythm, a connection that felt both familiar and new. Later, lying in her bed, Laura turned to me with a look of certainty. You're moving in. It wasn't a question. It was a fact. Wait, I said, propping myself up. Don't you think that's a little bold? What if this doesn't work out? She gave me a playful, yet serious look. David, we've been friends for decades. We're not kids anymore. No games. You need a place. I've got space. You care about me. I care about you. It's practical. Save your rent money for your future mortgage. And let's face it, you already know this house better than I do. I hesitated. What about Melissa? She's literally across the street. Laura shrugged. That's her problem, not ours. What matters is what we want. And I want you here. So I moved in. At first, it felt strange, domestic in a way that was both comforting and unfamiliar. Melissa, predictably, didn't handle it well. She stayed bitter, clinging to the past like it owed her something. One afternoon, I was patching a crack in her driveway when she walked out, arms crossed. David, when are you going to come back home? This is ridiculous. You belong here. I peeled the top off the sealant and didn't look up. Melissa, I know you regret how things turned out, but it's over. You need to move on. She snapped. With who? My clients are divorced women. I work with gay hairdressers. I never thought I'd be one of those sad, lonely women. I didn't say anything. Just kept working. Her tone softened. David, please. Just give me another chance. For the boys. For the holidays. I sighed. Melissa, I forgave you a long time ago. But trust? That's a different story. I stood and faced her. The boys will be home soon. We can alternate dinners between your house and Laura's, but that's the line. She folded her arms, jaw tight. I will never step foot in her house. Then we'll miss you, I said simply. Surprisingly, the boys adjusted to our new reality without much fuss. By Christmas, they'd badgered Melissa into joining us at Laura's for a short visit. It was tense, awkward, but it was something. Over time, Melissa and Laura developed a kind of polite Cold War, thin smiles, brief nods, tight conversations about nothing. But it was progress. Laura encouraged me to keep helping Melissa with little projects, and Melissa begrudgingly accepted. After a year of living with Laura, I realized I was happier than I'd been in ages. Our relationship wasn't the fiery kind you see in movies. It was deeper than that. Steady, safe, rooted in decades of friendship and shaped by everything life had thrown at us. One evening, I brought it up. I've been thinking, I said, brushing my hand over hers. Maybe we should make it official. Laura looked at me for a long moment, then cupped my face in her hands. David, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. But I promised myself I'd only marry once. I hope you can understand that. I didn't fully understand. Not then. But I remembered something my father used to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Life has a strange way of balancing chaos with peace. Over the next few years, we found a rhythm, not through grand gestures or sweeping romance, but in the small, deliberate ways we cared for each other. Laura and I built something solid. A partnership, a home. It didn't burn bright like fireworks, but it never faded either. Melissa found her footing too. Eventually, she stopped looking backward. She focused on herself, on her boys. The bitterness dulled, replaced by a quiet dignity. On rare occasions, that distance even gave way to shared smiles and moments of mutual pride. The boys? They thrived. Seeing the men they're becoming strong, kind, compassionate, fills me with a pride I can't put into words. Holidays became a delicate rotation, sometimes at Melissa's, sometimes at Laura's, always centered around family, food, and laughter. Even if the past lingered in the shadows, it no longer had power. My father's words often echo in my head. A man's strength isn't in what he holds on to, but in what he learns to let go of. Now, sitting on the porch beside Laura, watching the sun melt into gold along the horizon, I finally understand. Peace doesn't come from what you have, or even what you've lost. It comes from what you choose to build, one honest step at a time.